Good morning. I'm Jean Patterson, and I'm a member of this congregation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you on this fabulous fall morning. We're so glad you're here with us at this time. We would like to start by welcoming any guests and visitors. If we have anyone, please stand, tell us your name and where you're from so we can recognize you. Yes.
I'm Leslie. This is Jade, and we are from the Kansas City area, Waldo area. Welcome.
Welcome. Others? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Juliet. This is my second visit. It's very impressive first time.
Oh, great. Hope there's a third. Others? We would also like to welcome those of you who are joining us online. Glad you're with us today as well. Now, Anthony, would you like to introduce our musical guest for today?
Good morning. We're very excited today to have members of the Traditional Music Society here in Kansas City join us today for some African drumming and music. And we're excited. Music director Xavier Fleming is with us, and his friend and co-patriot and musician DJ Malavra, and the CEO and leader of the Traditional Music Society, Bird Fleming. Let's welcome them.
Will you rise, as is traditional for the words of prayer from the Jewish tradition known as the Mourner's Kaddish? Let the glory of God be praised and hallowed, and the name of the Holy One be blessed in the world that has been created according to God's will. May the realm of holy righteousness soon be completed in our own lifetimes, in our own days, in the days of our house and of all the nations in the near future. And so it is said, Amen. Let the majesty of God be praised and the name of the Holy One be blessed forever, as long as worlds endure. Let the name of the Holy One be exalted with honor and extolled in glory, though it is beyond all the praises, songs, and adorations that this world can utter. And so it is said, Amen. For us and for all the nations, may the blessing of peace and the promise of life come true for all people. May the Creator of peace in the heavens above bring peace to those who mourn and comfort to the bereaved, and send peace to us and all the nations and all those who dwell on earth. And so it is said, Amen. May be seated. We don't yet know the faith communities of Maurice Stallard and Vicki Lee Jones, the two people gunned down at a grocery store in Jeffersontown, Kentucky on Wednesday, only because they were Black. It doesn't matter. They are also on our minds and in our hearts this morning. We mourn their deaths and honor their memories, along with those killed at Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh yesterday. We hold in our sorrow and in our loving thoughts all those for whom these terrible acts cut too close to the bone. All who feel and know that their lives and their livelihoods Their homes and their houses of worship and their communities are threatened by the rising normalcy of words and deeds perpetrated in the name of bigotry, hatred, fear, and isolationism. In the end, that is all of us. As one prophet has said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we are sadly reminded today that hatred anywhere, in high places or low, is a threat to safety and wholeness everywhere. My colleague and our friend, Doug Alpert, Rabbi of Congregation Kol Ami, which gathers here in our building, writes this: "Today I mourn for the hate and brokenness in our world. Tomorrow I will continue the fight for all the people I love, the targets of baseless hate and the marginalized in our world, the fight against injustice. At this crucial moment in our history, you are either for compassion, empathy, and love for all those created B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image, or you are not. I and Congregation Kol Ami KC stand with the Pittsburgh Jewish community and with all who live in fearful marginalization. So let us also, on this sad and solemn morning, choose once more to side with love, to rededicate ourselves to justice, to be people of truth and healing in our troubled world. And if you would like to give action to that dedication, I encourage you to find one of the sign-up sheets that are going around and volunteer to staff our welcome desk. There they are right there. On a Friday evening, so that our friends at Kol Ami can worship in greater safety and peace of mind. Let us remember, as we kindle once again this chalice flame, that neither the lightless expanse of all space, nor all the depths of human hatred has ever or can ever put out the light that lives within and among us. Tori.
Hello, my name is Tori, and I light this chalice for the right of conscience and the use of democratic process within our congregations and in society at large.
Very nice. Now would you rise once more and speak together the words of our community's covenant. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Be seated. As you have observed, we have departed from our planned order of service in response to the devastating events of this past week. It is necessary to pause and take account of the heartbreak among us as our nation descends ever further into the tribulations of tyranny and intolerance. Nevertheless, even in death, we are in life. And our children have been working in an old tradition of spiritual awareness that the dying of the year is an eerie season when the veil between the worlds is thin. They have created jack-o'-lanterns to light our way through this spooky time, and here they are to show us. You can take one of their creations home with you if you don't have time to carve your own. Check out the table following the service while you are waiting to have Manny Pedram sign a book for you. Now let's welcome the Pumpkin Parade. Careful of the candles. Okay, you're going to put the stick in there.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you all? That's good. That's good. We have more coming? Oh, yeah. Come on, more. There we go. Right. Microphone? All right. Okay. So, great costumes. Great costumes. All these different characters. All right. Outfits and angels and butterflies and witches and goblins and ghosts and things. Come on. All right. Well, you know, we are the Sounds of Africa, African drum group. We're located here in Kansas City, Missouri. We're part of a big organization called the Traditional Music Society. And we represent West Africa and all those areas where Africans have landed, so to speak. And these are the traditional drums from Africa, the djembe and the dundu. And along with drumming in Africa, we have songs, okay? And I wish I had a scary Halloween song from Africa, but they don't celebrate Halloween there, okay? But it's kind of similar in the sense that they do celebrate harvest. Like the Reverend said, that, you know, one season into the next, there's a thin veil there, all right? You go into winter, all right, after you've taken all of your good stuff from the garden, all right? But I do have a song that's kind of scary, all right, for get close to Halloween, all right? And it's called Bankamali, all right? Can you say Bankamali? Can I hear it again? Can I hear it again? Now repeat after me. Okay, now I want them to hear it down on the plaza, okay? 1, 2, ready, go. Ah! Again. Ah! Again. Ah! Okay? Can you remember that? That's going to be your response, or the chorus, and I'll sing the verse, and I'll be telling the story in my verse, and this song is from Senegal, and it's an age-old song that they still sing in the village to this very day because it's about youngsters and kids. all right? And as the story goes, there was a household and a little young lady in the household. She had a stepmother. And her stepmother, there was some quarrels in the house. It was pretty unsettled. And she didn't like the little girl because she was from another part of the family, so to speak, all right? And she sent this young lady way deep down into the forest one night, all by herself to do some chores. Way deep down into the forest. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my. They know the story. Now, is that a true story? Are there bears in Africa? All right, just checking. All right. I'm not going to ask you where are they because you said the zoo. Lions and tigers, but not now. And she said it right now. Okay, are there tigers in Africa? No. Ah, where are tigers found? It turned into a zoological class all of a sudden. I don't know what that happened. So that's your part. Now, when you hear the word Mina Falila, I want you to sing your ah. Okay? Listen carefully. Don't miss the bus now. It comes pretty quick now. Here we go. Yeah, you guys can join in too. You big kids, as you know, in that sense of the word. Okay, join right on. Okay. All right, give yourselves a hand. That was great. Give yourself. Now, what does all that mean? Okay, as the story goes, as I told you, now this young lady got caught down into the forest down by the river way deep down years ago. She encountered a very mystical woman that roamed the forest, that met her down there and was taken by her story and took her in, all right, and embraced her and blessed her with happiness and riches. And she was successful and happy for the rest of her life. So you're saying, you're celebrating your victory over fear and darkness and the bad things in life. Remember that, okay? We're going to start the rhythm and remember your part, okay? Gong, 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 dee, dee, gong, gong, gong. And you guys in the background, give them a little hand clap like this. Right on the beat. Right. You guys listen to me too. Here we go. Bankamale. This is from Senegal, West Africa. If you listen closer to the story, it's kind of like a Cinderella thing going on there. Bankamale balakumae mina falala. Akadokile unge mina falala. 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 Very good.
Why don't we sing them the song that we sing for the children when they leave? Go now in peace, may love guide all your ways. Beauty be the blessing of your nights and days. Truth on your lips and kindness.
You ready? Good morning. I'm Nelson Maurice. You're not, so let me get on with this. I'm Nelson Maurice, here to remind you that this is a glorious morning filled with sunlight and pumpkins and wonderful children. And I'm here to remind you that this is a marvelous community, the All Souls UU community of Kansas City, and that you are part of it. An important, delightful part. Yes, you, delightful. Amen. If you don't believe me, look at someone near you and smile at her or him. Yeah, go ahead and smile. It's okay. You won't violate some secret commandment left over from our Puritan days. They'll smile back. Bet you they will. If they don't, just stick out your tongue and scrunch up your face. That'll get them going. See what a wonderful thing you've done, helping light up the world, and it's not even noon yet. Gotten some old Oscar the Grouch to add a little more sunshine to our old world? Oh, maybe you are that Oscar the Grouch. Well, we all need practice smiling and doing the other fun stuff, so keep it up. And to help you in that endeavor, here's a pleasant thought. First prize in the Mega Million drawing this week got to 1-point-something billions with a B as in bountiful. Someone won it, and that puts us out of our collective frenzy. But at the same time, the Powerball lottery, they get us coming and going, got to 600 million. Perhaps you bought tickets last week and were walking around with both of them in your wallet or purse, and expecting and thinking about what you would do if you won $2 billion. Fantastic. Bet you that makes you smile. You bought those tickets in the hope that it might make your life better or make the lives of a whole bunch of people better. You didn't win. I don't think anybody here won. Oh, somebody raising their hand back, just scratching her ear. Well, you didn't win. You knew you weren't going to win. But you bought the tickets anyway because you had hope that you might be able to do some good for yourself and for others. Now, I want you to come a little closer, lean forward in your chairs, because what I'm going to tell you is secret, and I don't want anybody else to hear this, just you and me. Here's a 100% genuine, surefire way to do some good and have some fun. Give more to your church, our All Souls community. And here's the really special part. Find fun ways to do it. After church, go out and buy a carved pumpkin. That'll be fun. Support any of the people at the tables out there. Support any of the 50 or so groups in this church that are working on special projects. Increase your pledge. That's a really important one because it allows the church to plan activities that they can do with your money. Ask Chuck in the ground committee if you can buy them a tree. That would be fun. Ask the building committee if you can buy them a bucket of paint or whatever they need. Ask me if you can buy me a beer.
Very fun.
Ask Julie Kaler, our treasurer, if you can write her a check. You'll get to see her famous million megawatt smile. Look around and find ways to help, ways to make this place work better. And at the risk of sounding radical, ask how you can help. That will really make people smile. And now I'm going to go sit down and shut up, and you can smile.
And in that spirit, this morning's offering will now be given and gratefully received. Will you join me in the words of dedication for our offering? We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
Good morning. Our readings this morning are from Global Discontent, the Mosaic of Cultural Diversity by Manny Pedram. A new vision should begin by asking, what is the shape of the future that humanity wants? What are the challenges and barriers to overcome for a pluralistic global community? In the 21st century globalization, what are the elements of the future we should expect? Are we ready for a nonviolent, violent, and peaceful international community? Or do we continue unrestricted armament and global violence? The true vision could be realized when every individual has the perception that he or she is empowered and there are opportunities for everyone. Empowerment enables the individual to realize his or her potential within their own culture, their own religious beliefs, customs, habits, and lifestyles. When people are empowered, there is success in their community as a whole, in education and in business, in entrepreneurship, and in art and culture. How long do we tolerate environmental degradation, considering all the evidence of human mistreatment of planet Earth and respect for our natural resources? With all the advancement in the various fields of science, technology, and medicine, is there a new vision that can bring diverse societies culturally and socially closer together?
There is need for a universal cooperative institution, such as the United Nations. The civil society of the UN has played and could play a major role about the need for orderly participation of global citizens and majority consensus in decision-making. Let us declare a universal dream, a world society that has overcome racial bigotry, but a diversified global community merged together to form a universal peaceful mosaic, a universal pluralistic community in which human understanding, human rights, and human reason overcome hatred, bigotry, religious and ethnic conflicts. It is essential to enhance awareness of self as well as others, the variation of lifestyles around the globe. Exploration and acceptance of visions of global community is crucial for reducing the crises around the world.
Now, Anthony tells me that you can't sing this next hymn. So I'm going to invite you to rise and prove him wrong.
If every neighbor in every nation, young and old, each generation, held their hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in the world had a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no In every nation in the world, set a true course for freedom. If every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, if all the children of every nation made a promise to creation, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
Yay, thank you. Can I just say right now that I am proud to be a globalist? When I do a jigsaw puzzle, I start with the border, right? Don't you? The outside edges contain the rest. Once you have those in place, everything else happens within them. The edges of the human puzzle are the globe. That is the frame that holds us all. Everything else, every nation, every government, every struggle, every life happens within those edges and is just one piece of the whole. Nothing that is bad for the globe can be good for any part of the globe. Nothing that destroys the earth can benefit any corner of the earth as a continuing practice. If someone asks you what Unitarian Universalists believe, this is one place you can start. We are both moral and pragmatic globalists. We understand that as human beings, we are all in this together because we all depend upon the earth for the survival of our species. We are all different and we all matter, but none of us is special or favored or entitled to more rights than others. We know from history that nations and systems rise and fall, but the planet is our shared stage. This is where it all happens, and whatever harms the earth harms us all. This is a truth that the wisdom of every generation comes to recognize, and the ignorance of every generation repudiates with loathing. Bruce Knotts, the director of the Unitarian Universalist United Nations office, reminds us of this history. In 1919, he tells us, the world was struggling to recover from the First World War, and the League of Nations was created. The idea was American, but the United States never joined. Then in 1929, the US stock market crashed, and its effects reverberated around the world. Everywhere there was unemployment, inflation, poverty, and desperation. The Italians decided to trust their fate to Benito Mussolini. Later, the Germans put their trust in Adolf Hitler. In Spain, there was a civil war which resulted in the dictatorship of Francisco Franco. In Japan, militarists and expansionists took power. And the world was set for a Second World War that was far more deadly and affected a greater part of the globe than the first. As the Second World War ended, the countries of the world came together again and formed the United Nations, which grew to sponsor about 108 other agencies such as UNICEF, UNESCO, the World Bank, the IMF, the World Food Program,
and many more. Like the League of Nations, the United Nations is flawed, but it has prevented a third world war for 3/4 of a century. It has expanded human rights, drastically decreased extreme poverty, and dealt with health emergencies such as Ebola and SARS. Eventually, the United Nations also brought the world together to tackle the existential threat of climate change. In the present day, climate change and conflict have produced the most massive global migrations since the Second World War. When problems become too big for governments to solve quickly, as happened in 1929, electorates turn to authoritarian nationalist leaders who promise to put the nation first, to push out or eliminate the others, and to bring jobs and prosperity for all pure members of the nation. We saw this in the form of the America First Committee in the United States during the Depression, led by Charles Lindbergh. That movement was anti-Jewish, anti-immigrant, and according to President Franklin Roosevelt, Nazi. Fortunately for the United States at that time, the America First Committee failed in taking power. Today, the world is again stressed, and again voters are turning to ethno-nationalist parties to push out or eliminate the other and provide jobs and prosperity to all real members of their society. In the 1930s, this led to the worst suffering and devastation the modern world has ever seen. And it is clear that turning in that direction again will produce even more catastrophic results. What's the alternative? It is still the United Nations. At a time when we face global problems, it is time to strengthen the UN, to confront the great national and corporate powers and demand accountability and peace. It was over 120 member states in the General Assembly that moved forward a treaty for the abolition of nuclear weapons last year. UN reports on climate change, poverty, global health, gender equity, education, and more are highly respected. It is easy to become depressed with the current lack of US government cooperation with the UN. However, other countries and local and state entities are stepping up to take the lead in areas where US leadership no longer exists. And perhaps that is not even a bad thing. An important climate conference was also held recently in California, attended by climate activists from all over the world in support of the UN Paris Agreement, showing that the US is still in, even if our federal government is not. The problem is not that we don't know how to do this. It isn't always as straightforward as we'd like, thinking globally. There are conflicting interests and historical injustices and communication challenges to work through. But that's just work. It's what the United Nations has spent 70 years helping us learn to do and get better at. The problem is that human beings are hardwired for tribalism, especially when we are stressed. We know in our DNA that we don't survive as lone individuals. We evolved as a social species. And it is only in the rational imagination of the Enlightenment that we exist as separate and independent monads of consciousness. When we are threatened, we retreat not into the safety of solitude, but into a group that protects and reinforces us. This can be a family, a gang,
a religion, a school, any kind of tribe that offers a sense of identity, and especially solidarity in the face of enemies. This kind of inherited tribalism defines itself by the difference between us and them. It gets its energy from that opposition. And in fact, if one enemy is by chance obliterated, another one must be discovered, or the group identity will dissolve. When that happens, usually factions will emerge within the group so that a new form of opponents is established and a renewed sense of identity can be cultivated against them. We, of course, see this process at its most crude and blatant in the way the current political administration encourages animosity toward a whole panoply of enemies: immigrants, reporters, uppity women, poor people, gay, lesbian, and transgender people, African American people, Jews, protesters, scientists, Democrats, and anyone else who gets in their way. The events of this past week, the shootings in Pittsburgh and Kentucky, show that these ideas are not academic speculation. Tribalism is a process that, unless recognized and managed, costs real human lives right now. I want to suggest this morning that two things are true, difficult as it is to hold them both together in our minds at the same time. The first is that false equivalency is a fantasy we can no longer afford to entertain, and sympathy is not an effective antidote to tyranny. The will to power must be met with power: the power of truth, the power of solidarity, the power of democracy, the power of justice, the power of creativity, the power that rises when we protect the vulnerable and those we love. At the same time, we must not allow ourselves to become tribal in response to our own fears and alarm. We must hold faithfully to the vision of a world for all humanity, and indeed all creatures. We must resist the temptation to poison our opponents, knowing that whatever toxins we put out into the world inevitably return to poison us and our children. We must not begin to define ourselves according to our enemies, but only ever by our hopes and our values. We do this, I believe, by becoming the grown-ups in the room, by living into our spiritual maturity to the point that we can recognize and manage a toddler's tantrums without being drawn into an escalating shouting match. If we become coarse and cruel and brutal, we cannot hope to overcome cruelty and brutality in others when they are taking root in our own souls. This is why the work of the United Nations is and has always been important. It is why the vision that is the foundation of that sometimes unfashionable organization can never be obsolete. Our friend Manny Pedram is right. What we have to build is a mosaic. We live in a world that is always being assembled from broken pieces. We build it bit by bit out of the shards of human kinship and understanding, out of all the dreams that are constantly being shattered against the stone walls of oppression, both ancient and modern. Ever so patiently, ever so carefully, we fit them together, the fragments of our shared hopes, as we ponder the question, What is the shape of the future humanity wants? There is no place to have that future but right here on this globe we share. There is no one to build it but us, and no one to leave it to except our children. All of us carrying that evolutionary curse of tribalism, needing to grow up, called to use our pain and grief to come into adulthood so that we can choose our fate rather than being lured into it by indolence and false comfort and deceit. The United Nations is a concept and a practice that must be earned anew in each generation as the human race strives toward maturity and wisdom, to recognize that truth in each of us which transcends enmity as the source of our identity. Only if we can intentionally lay aside the urge to fall back into the trap of exclusivist cadres of selfishness, intolerance, and violence will our generation be one that contributes to the building of that mosaic for the whole of humanity. We have a choice. We can be globalists or tribalists. We can put nation first with arrogance and fear of enemies. This week has shown us the consequences of that option, and they are tragic and terrible. Or we can choose to lean into a loyalty to all our kindred here on this sweet, bright blue planet that we all must abide on together. We can choose the legacy and the challenge of the United Nations, the careful, delicate mosaic of understanding in the midst of diversity, the growth into maturity and wisdom that has always been the best hope for our global future. I think you cannot have this fragile, beautiful earth unless you learn soon to keep peace. And I think you cannot have either wholeness or peace until you learn to see one indivisible humanity and one indivisible earth to share. So shall we lift our voices together in song? It's not there. Oh, okay. How about if we do the last verse of the one we just sang? Can we find that? Hang on.
There'll be okay.
Okay, let's try that.
If every nation in the world set a true course for freedom, if every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, if all the children of every nation made a promise to creation, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
We extinguish, as always, this flame, but not the light of truth or the warmth of community or the fire of our commitments. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. So let us live together in peace. Let us live with inner serenity. Let us weave our dreams for the future together. And when we die, let us die in peace. Now we want that song that we had just a second. That's it.
May all who died rest in peace.